One, and we are recording for the third time with Lieutenant Colonel Bernie Flowers, as well as Don the Pleb. Everybody knows Don. Nobody cares. He's old news.
Indeed, nobody cares.
Bernie's the new show in town. Mr. Flowers, please introduce yourself to everybody. Tell them where you are running and what you are running for.
I'm glad that you asked that question, Tommy. I tell you, first of all, thank you for having me.
Of course.
We seem to have hit it off, and I'm always looking for new friends, and I look like I found one.
Hell yeah, man.
Great.
Hell yeah.
I am running in the 2nd District of Maryland, and I don't know if you guys are familiar, but on Monday, Governor Hogan signed a document that changed the districts in this state. They've been gerrymandered for a very, very long time. So District 2, as of Sunday afternoon, was Eastern Baltimore County, Northern Anne Arundel County, Dundalk, that sort of area. Now it's changed, and it's changed, I believe, in my favor. It's now, we're talking mostly Carroll County, starting in, Catonsville, basically all the way up to the state line. A lot of very, very conservative people, somewhat semi-rural, suburban folks that are very, very, very red in their thinking. So it makes me very, very happy. And it also puts the incumbent Congressman Ruppersberger in a situation where he has to move away from his base. And he's got to convince those conservatives to vote for him. And I got a better chance. I can stand toe to toe. Yeah, he's got a lot of money, but I got a lot of shoe leather.
Yeah.
And so I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah. And because the last time we talked, it was still being proposed, correct? Or the judge had just ruled on it. So
yeah, very much so. And it's been, the Democrats, bless their hearts, have been they set this thing up so they had a perpetual win, and it took a judge to change it, years and years. So I got to give Governor Hogan props for fighting the good fight, and all the other people that fought this. I think it was Delegate Parrott and a few other people that filed a federal lawsuit and brought this to the attention, and just kept fighting. And so I am just thrilled the way things have turned out. And right now I'm doing 2 or 3 events every day. Yeah. But your event is a priority. I actually moved somebody out of the way to talk to you.
Oh, that makes my day. Don,
it's just for that smile, man. Don't let him.
You.
You. Right there it is. That's why we're all here.
But
that sounds actually really incredibly great. Actually, on the redistricting front, right? Because I have looked at Maryland districts a strangely lot for a guy who's been there all of once ever, but it's the state that and California tend to be the states that I bring up when people go, Republicans gerrymander, and I'm like, really? Have you looked at Maryland and California? They're terrible.
Yeah.
And I've got a map pulled up. Tommy, I could send it to you.
Yeah, you can share it again. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to move this thing over, and actually, this map is actually a little better than the one I showed you last time. Okay. So we're going to go share screen, and move it over after what you taught me the last time.
Yes, sir. And so for everybody listening, today's Thursday, April 7th, 2022. And the last time we talked, this was all, I think a judge had just ruled on it or turned it and had to go higher up. And I guess since we've last spoken, Governor Hogan has actually kind of dropped the hammer on it. So
right. So if you look here in this red area, this is the state of Maryland. And, you got Harrisburg, Pennsylvania up here to give you a little bit of perspective, and the rest of Virginia here. So this is all Maryland, and we got a weird shaped state. But what I'm going to show you is that all this area here, all the way down here, here's Towson, here's Parkville, here's Perry Hall, Eldersburg, all the way up to the state line. And these are country folk. These are my people. And so I dare Dutch Ruppersberger to come in here and convince them that they're wrong and keep spending and wasting their money. So like I said, I'm all in. I'm feeling pretty good about this. I consider this to be divine intervention.
Absolutely. So I guess let's to relate what we talked about last week. I mean, we talked about critical race theory. We talked about public schools, charter schools, private prisons, crime. Actually, Don, I think you'd like I brought up Gorgon's stare, and
Oh my God.
the color left Bernie's face. And he goes, "How'd you know about that?" Yeah, I go, "It's a book. It's a book." And he goes, "Really?" So I show him the book, and he's like, "All right, good." But Don's actually probably the only other person I know that knows about it. But of all the things we talked about, a lot of those did seem to be more Baltimore centric. How does this shift? It's divine intervention. It's good. These are your people, right? Those country folk that cling to their guns and religion. But how does this shift your policies or how you're going to go about things? I mean, you can't. I would imagine you can't maybe necessarily bring up in the middle of Hampstead the problem with crime in downtown Baltimore.
Well, actually, there's a little bit of Baltimore in this area.
Right? Oh, all right.
So the problem still exists. It's just that it shifts a little bit. Baltimore is the center of everything around here. So, you know me, I'm not changing jack. I'm doing what I do, but the idea, the people are different. It's not me that's changing.
Sure.
The folks that I'm trying to convince will be, I think, a little bit easier to convince to vote our way because, there's a lot more liberals. And can you see my cursor moving around?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, there's a lot more liberal people east of I-95. Let's just face it. That's the current District 3 down in Glen Burnie in that area. A lot of patriots there, but a lot of liberals there as well. But you go up into here, this is a little bit more our style. So again, maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse. I got a lot of work to do, but how do my policies change? I'm going a little bit redder. And what I mean by that, I can be a little bit more conservative in the things that I talk about. I don't have to watch my tongue quite so much. For example, I don't know if you're familiar with the Patriot Club of Towson. And I met with them Wednesday. I've spoken at their club twice. And you're talking about some conservatives. These guys are organizing, along with the Republican Women of Baltimore County, organizing election judges. We're talking about hundreds, maybe even 1,000 people that are going to be in every little area to make sure that things are fair. Not trying to tip the scale, just making sure that things are fair.
Just make sure don't want any flatbeds of ballots showing up at 4 a.m.
Don't want any poster boards on the outside of your ballot counting.
There you go.
That still boils my brain. I still don't understand how, but there's no reason to keep going into that. But that perhaps more correct wording is your policies don't. I guess if your policies change, that would kind of be BS. I'd be like, who are you? But it's more so, what can you emphasize? If I have you on, we're talking about this versus if, I have someone else on and we're talking, if I have on Dr. Malone, we're going to really be talking about whatever mRNA research. So I guess in the same way, you shift what you're talking about, not so much what you stand for. Could we, Don, I'm not letting you talk.
I know, but I'm going to talk over you anyway.
All right, good.
I mean, you know what the difference here comes down to is, have you ever tried to explain why gun control is bad to a leftist versus walking in front of a bunch of conservatives and going, gun control sucks, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Right.
The people in this area are conservatives. Most of them have weapons and know how to use them. Down where I was before, you got a lot of conservatives, but it's a little bit more mixed and you have to be a little bit more nuanced in your delivery. But up here in the red, I can be myself. And so I'm feeling very, very comfortable with that. I'm not saying I'm a shoe-in to win by any stretch of the imagination, because my opponent, if I get through the primary, has $1 million war chest.
Sure.
And he can buy a lot of good influence with that. But again, me and my crew, we're doing this thing the grassroots way, and we want to at least have a fair shot. And I think we have got about as a fair shot as we're going to get.
Yeah, do what you can where you are with what you have.
Amen.
Don, your thoughts, because I'm rudely shutting you up.
I'm a big Adapt and Overcome fan. So, some of us carry dumb sayings with us for life, and I am that some.
Yeah.
I happen to know, I know a guy in Texas that just ran for state senate, and he spent about $20,000, and his opponent spent two of them about $1 million, and he got enough of the vote that he caused a runoff with 20 grand. So this is very, very doable if you have any reasonable amount of money.
That's what I'm counting on.
Yeah. So Bernie, what other things do you want to touch on that maybe we didn't touch on last time, for the people listening that actually want to get to know more about you and they look at us and we're not touching on anything of all the things we touched on last time, and because we kind of ended up cutting it last time, what other topics or issues would you like to go into and maybe tell people where you stand on them, and I don't know, win their vote or win their disdain or whichever you want?
Well, I appreciate the Vine, man. That's really cool of you to let me get on your program and talk about what I want. You want me to put this map away?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do that. Stop sharing. There we go.
Yeah.
I learned something from you last week. I'm getting all this technical stuff.
Hey, I learned how to share screen last week with you. I'm not, Don knows I've had on authors and generals and doctors, and they're like, Tommy, can I share screen? I'm like, I don't even know how to I'm like, can you text me the image and I'll hold my phone up to the camp? So don't worry. I learned
it's happened.
It's genuinely happened. It's not, it's embarrassing.
You know, my expertise is in killing people and breaking things. Not
God, I like you.
Bernie Flowers 2022, killing people and breaking things.
What is a bad habit?
No, it's a wonderful habit. It's what you're needed for. It's what things do you want to go into that we maybe didn't touch on last time?
We touched on a lot, but here's the thing. Crime is still a problem. I was in Baltimore with Dan Cox this past Saturday, and I got to give Dan credit. He's a real patriot. Not that his opponent isn't. It's just that Dan is a personal friend. And we went into the hood. We went into the Harlem Theater in Baltimore. When you're talking about The Wire, that's West Baltimore, and that's where we went. I got there about an hour. And a friend of mine, I don't know if you know Chris Anderson, he once ran for one of the city offices. But the issue of the day is he's from there. He was born and raised in that area. And he gave me a little windshield tour. And it was bad. I saw these huge, gigantic brownstone old buildings, houses that should be renovated. Beautiful infrastructure, but they had fallen into disrepair. And boarded up houses, and people, Americans, you know, should not have to live like that. The takeaway was I saw some kids playing on the street, throwing a football on the sidewalk. And I asked Chris, hey man, there's a park 100 yards down the street. I can see this park. Why are these kids throwing a football on the sidewalk on a 65-degree beautiful day? He said, that's where the drug dealers do their business. And if those kids go over there, there's a chance they may get hit by a stray bullet. And this was 1 p.m. Yeah. And so we drove down. I saw the same thing on another street. And I saw about 3 of these parks that were just totally empty. And I saw, you know, young men probably between the ages of 20 and 40 kind of hanging out in the park alone. And then I saw people on the sidewalks, or better yet, the corners, you know, very obviously doing something nefarious. And I'm sitting here thinking Americans live here and Americans should feel safe. And instead of sending huge amounts of money overseas to help people who are not Americans, we need to bring some of that money back and help Baltimore. Now, one other thing, let's take this into account that the last several mayors that they've had in Baltimore were all Democrats, and most of them left in is that a good word?
That's very generous of you.
Generous. I was told that I need to be a gentleman. So the bottom line is the money that we're sending into Baltimore is not getting to the people. And what I would like to do, if I am so lucky to be elected, I'd like to bring in one of the big national firms, accounting firms like Ernst & Young, and do an independent audit with people who have no dog in the fight. And even if you do a state audit, I'm not casting aspersions on anyone, but this is beyond, this is a national problem in a lot of the inner cities. And I'd like to start with Baltimore, bring in one of these big companies and like, hey, let's find out where that money went.
Yeah.
Mr. Alessandro.
Yeah. Just find out. I mean? Yeah. Just find out where. Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, 2 of my best friends live in Baltimore. I haven't been up there in a year or two, but when I would go up there maybe like once every other month or something for like 3 years. And I would go there and I would get there. And I mean, I would always, it was weird to learn. I have to call them like 30 minutes ahead and I'll be like, hey, I'm coming up. And they'd wait
Yeah.
till I was there and they'd be like, all right, there's a parking spot. Like you can park right outside the house. If there wasn't, they would be like, keep circling until we can find a spot. And I'd get in, you go up to the door, four numbers, beep, 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 you open it, open the metal door, and then
Yeah.
open the other door. And it's, do you have everything from your car that you need? I'm like, yeah, I got. They're like, do you have all your valuables? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, good. And then we go there, we order food. The liquor store 200 yards down the road, 1 p.m. on a July. Hey,
Yeah.
well, we wait for food, guys. I'm gonna go grab some booze. It's on me this weekend. Don't go alone. Hold on. Well, he's coming
Yeah.
out of the shower. We're gonna all go together. I'm like, guys, like, I get that I'm lily white, but like, come on, it's right. And they're like, no.
No.
We go down, we come back, and we're there, and we'll be all hanging out drinking. You do not leave the compound while you're there. It's fun when you're there. You order everything, and then every once in a while they pull up their phone and, yep, quarter mile from here, guy stabbed in the neck.
Yeah. All the time.
What? Oh, 2 shot dead. Oh, only 1 fatality. 1's critical. How far away? Quarter mile. And
Yeah.
you start to go, oh, this is. I remember one time I got there and they were out at their job. I'm like, can I just like park in your driveway? They said no. They gave me an address to go park at. It was the police station.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I'm like, this isn't. So that kind of changed my mind where I like Trump. I also know Trump is very brash. That changed my mind when he starts talking about these sort of shithole cities and you go, okay, on one hand, no, that's not presidential. But on the other hand, you go there and you go, I've never, and I grew up going around Atlanta and I was like, I've never seen anything like this. So just from my own experience, so it's not to just sit here and, say things unchecked. That's my own experience. And they were in a relatively good area of Baltimore. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not to crush your hopes and dreams there, but I've done a lot of traveling over the past couple of years, specifically to major cities. And that is almost every major city I've been to. As soon as the
Really?
sun falls, everywhere in the country.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And we've allowed it. Here's the problem. We're sitting here. I was telling somebody at this thing the other day, Republicans are busy working. So while we're at work raising our kids, Nancy D'Alessandro Pelosi and her crew are busy destroying America and getting paid to do it. There's money in keeping people poor. Did you realize that?
Oh, absolutely.
So much money.
These private prisons that Joe Biden started with his 1994 crime bill, there's a rumor that the prison population, or better yet, the prison companies, check the grades of kids coming out of high school. That's how they do their planning for their business model. Somebody that lived there told me that, and I believe this person.
It's not unreasonable.
I mean,
The
do you
kids
not
that don't graduate are going to be coming to prison in about 6 months.
do you not remember a couple of years ago there was that like huge lobbying against I don't remember if it was state or national, but against like the decriminalization of marijuana. And one of the huge obviously it was like Big Pharma was against it, Big Alcohol was against it, but it was like the private prison guard lobbyists.
Yeah.
They were like, no. They're what do you mean? They're, well, we're out of a job. And it's like, hold on. Well, now there's direct conflict of interest. So why would you want to clean up Baltimore? Keep it the Wild West. We're getting labor.
Yeah.
Well, there's other incentives that go on here, because that's basically what we're talking about. And like it or not, the left has a great sales pitch to poor people. We'll give you stuff, right?
Oh,
and if you don't have stuff, hey, I like stuff,
and we'll keep you poor.
Yeah,
for 3 generations.
As Mr. Flowers brought up last time, LBJ's gracious quote about having them vote Democrat for 200 years.
Yeah,
sitting president. Look it up, everybody listening. LBJ. That's what it is. Yeah.
And by the way, Mr. Biden, just for your edification, I don't know if we talked about this last time, but I think he was a speaker at Robert Byrd's funeral.
Yeah.
Now, Robert Byrd was a known Klansman. He was a recruiter for the KKK, but yet, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
Yeah, you can go speak at a Klan member's funeral, but if you're conservative, you're a KKK member. If you're a conservative, you're a Nazi. But while we're going to sit here and openly support the Azov Battalion in Ukraine, it's
Everything's
I
real
don't understand.
complicated now.
everything's upside down and backwards. So, but I did kind of want to go into this because I think Don would find it interesting. So when we kind of touched on these things last week, you pleasantly surprised me in that you said on the flip side, you don't necessarily just use a bigger hammer. You were like, the way to do this is not in the conservative boogeyman. They're just going to have more militarized versions of the police. You are actually very against the continual militarization of the police, and as much as I would like one, against the use of MRAPs. So,
Yeah.
Don,
Go on.
Go on. But if you could go into that a little more, Mr. Flowers, for Don, and maybe because I think it's, of all the things I've heard you talk about, I think that's one of the most important things is you do have a keen eye on what's going on. However, because what eventually does happen 10, 20, 50 years down the road is we're going to put a Band-Aid on crime in inner cities by militarizing the police forces. In 50 years, we're wondering, why is there a national police force kicking down the door of everyone? And much like Eisenhower warning about the military industrial complex, we can't pretend that it won't grow into a tumor in half a century. So where is that nuance? Where is that finesse in which you deal with a problem of more moles popping up without necessarily using a bigger whack-a-mole hammer?
Well, what we were talking about last week, as Tommy mentioned, is we are bringing home weapons of war that were manufactured to kill people. And those big MRAPs, 50 caliber machine guns, you should not be using that against your own people. That's ridiculous. And we want to keep our cops safe, but we don't want them to be social workers too much. We don't want to be way over here to the left, but on the other hand, we don't want Judge Dredd either. So there has to be a happy medium. And as I was saying to Tommy last week, one of the models is the Polizei. Don, you ever been to Germany?
No.
Well, I was over there I was stationed there for 3 years altogether, TDY's 5 years at least. And I got stopped by the Polizei once. And matter of fact, I had a lot of dealings with them because I had command. So my guys would get in trouble sometimes, and they'd call me to adjudicate or basically, take them on my own recognizance. But the issue of the day is they were very professional. And I found out that these guys were not just police officers, but they also were social workers. And what I meant by that was they had to have a master's degree in social work and speak several languages in order to be a Polizei or a policeman. Now, our situation being where we are, I mean, you can be a cop at 20 years old with a minimal of education. I'm not asking for anybody to get a bachelor's degree, but there should be some social work courses that allow people to collaborate, and also the idea is just getting out into the community. Last Saturday, I drove into that area on the highway. I saw some cops. I was there for like 4 hours, starting at 1 o'clock. We stayed till dark. Everybody wanted to leave at dark. But what I saw was I didn't see any police presence whatsoever, not one, in probably a 2 mile square area. And we got out and we were out in front of the place and looked around. I drove around. I didn't see any cops at all. I saw a lot of what I thought to be crime, but I think would have helped if you had cops out on the street. And what I mean on the street, not in police cars, but you go to a nice neighborhood where you guys live, especially in the suburbs, you'll see cops on bikes.
Yeah.
If you go over to Fells Point, where the area is a little bit nicer and more urbane, you see cops on bikes, but you don't see them in the places where we need them the most. I'm not putting cops down. I love them. I want to support the blue, but the issue of the day is, maybe we need to bring some of those cops over from Fells Point or some of the more nicer areas and bring them over to the hood where people actually need them.
So you're going to run headlong into a propaganda fight because of all places, the city of Oakland, oh God, it's been about 15 years, maybe 20 years back now, had a great plan for solving this kind of problem, which is to say that they told all the cops who worked in Oakland, look, if you want to stay working in Oakland, you have to live in Oakland.
Yeah.
And all of the cops that stayed moved to Oakland, or, where they were already living there. And whether anybody likes it or not, right? If a cop calls a bunch of cops, cops come running. And look, you don't have to like that, but look, if a Marine calls me, a bunch of Marines come running, right?
Yeah.
That's what happens. That's exactly how life goes. Is it perfect? Is it the most ideal world? No, but it's true. And so guess what happens? Now you've got drug dealer in the parking lot, and instead of and I'm not besmirching the average person, but look, the vast majority of people do not get, okay, here's your 10-point layout for all the things I need for a bolo. They just go, I don't know, there's a guy in a brown jacket and he's dealing drugs, right? And fat lot of good that does. There's 8 million brown jackets around, the park. The cops roll down there and go, what the hell do I do with this? And they turn around and leave. Cop, on the other hand, goes, there's a guy, he's about 5'9". He's wearing a brown jacket, has brown hair, green eyes. He's wearing this baseball cap, this color, right? And boom, that guy is found in minutes, right? And so it makes the reporting more efficient. It gets the calls out there faster, partly because, let's face it, hey, I can actually work with this information. On top of that, cops tend to know what's against the law. They know when something is going wrong, something's going down. They deal with it all the time, right?
Yeah.
And they kept that program for about 2 years. Crime dropped by something like 30%. And they went, we can't have this. And at the time, it was called community policing. They ended it immediately. And now what do you think of when you think of community policing? Social workers.
Yeah.
We'll send them in there with a notepad, right? It will be a straight propaganda war. But there is direct evidence that the kind of things you're talking about definitely work.
I'm glad to hear you say that. And, while you were talking, I was seeing all these dilapidated houses, but the kind of person with the eye that I have, I saw that the infrastructure in those houses was solid. I mean, these houses were built back in the 40s, where houses were built out of stone.
Yep.
So the issue of the day is, let's take some of these billions of dollars that we're sending overseas, renovate these houses and let cops live in them. How about that? Or let the residents of the place enjoy the benefits of having not only a nice new renovated house, but also having a police officer in the neighborhood. That would change things. Now, mind you, there were some places that had actually been renovated, but I ran into a developer. Matter of fact, the reason we were down there is Dan was speaking, and we met at this theater, and about 40 or 50 of the local residents showed up, and we took pictures and all that, and they listened to a couple of local politicians, to include myself, but they were pissed off, and they were starting to understand that voting for the same people and the same ideology over and over again is getting them the same result. My thoughts are, let's take some of this money that we're sending overseas and wasting in inflation, renovate these houses, make things better for our own people, and manage our money more efficiently. You do realize that since Biden came in, our trade deficit, or better yet, our national debt, went from $22 trillion to now $31 trillion. That's $91,000 for every man, woman, and child in the United States. And let's just say I paid off my mortgage.
Yeah.
I would still owe $91,000. And that is unsad. Our politicians are not doing a good job for us. But more importantly, it doesn't have to be that way. Let's track down some of this money and find out who stole it and take it back.
I think you're going to run into a problem that if the current administration is any example to go by, tracking down that money will piss off a lot of people in power. That's all. I don't know what else I even should say there.
Hey, bottom line is, we got to do this because, me and you I'm older than you, and I'm not going to say what I think you are, but I'm going to say Tommy's young. Tommy's got to deal with this for the next 40 years.
That's true.
We have lived well. The Marine Corps has obviously treated you well, because you're sitting there, smoking and joking and having a good time. Me, I'm fat, dumb, and happy. Tommy, I see his future as being less than what we've been able to enjoy. And I would like to to pay my debt to him and my grandchildren, my son and daughter, my wife, who are going to live after me. So, you know, I've got a good deal here, man. Let's make it good for everybody.
So I occasionally get you know, Don, when you say stuff like that, you sound really down. What, don't fight the powers that be? Nope, just dig in for the long haul, because that's what it's going to be, right? I find a lot of people, will say my age, who really want to just snap their fingers, have it done, right? And there is a decent amount of my age group that is the, you know, take a pill to get better, turn on the TV for entertainment, the, you know, whatever it is, just instant gratification thing. And the moment that they get okay, so this fight's going to take more than about 15 minutes, they're like, oh God, man, but like current TV show will be on in 25. I'm like, okay, well, you don't care. So next, but it is important to keep in mind that, you know, the president of the United States been in politics for about double my lifetime. That guy's
50
got,
years.
yep. Well,
I was 6
quite,
when he went into office.
yeah,
It
Jesus.
just hit a hot point. Term limits.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. You know, they're real popular when everybody's running. They're a lot less popular when they're
Actually, I think that's a good segue. I've had on here several times before Mike Durant, who's running for, everyone knows him as the Black Hawk Down pilot, but he's running for Senate out of Alabama. And he probably had one of the more measured approaches to term limits. He said grandfathered in term limits. And I remember I was like, yeah, but and he goes, I mean, he literally, you can go back and find the podcast. He goes, I mean, I can sit here and say term limits, and that sounds great on the campaign trail. The reality is no one in power is going to vote for it. So you're going to have to grandfather in. He goes, and that kind of took me as like that's not some idyllic pounding on the podium thing. That's a realistic approach. That's a very pragmatic approach. So with that, what would be a similar sort of pragmatic approach to, say, taking the money that we're sending overseas and bringing it back here and putting it into those brownstones, putting into a mixture of police and social workers, as not independent police and social workers, but a marriage of the two, social working police? Is there any realistic way, instead of just saying no money to wherever, is there a way to say it can work for business here? Instead of private prisons, it could be whatever, domestic construction that clean up brownstones. Is there a realistic way? Because we can all sit here and say what should go on, and you know, we should all sing Kumbaya and it should be rainbows and sunshine, beautiful, perfect. Right now it's raining and cloudy outside. Sometimes you got to deal with what's going on. Is there a pragmatic way to introduce like you talked about last week, with not just shaming public schools, but shifting it to charter schools who have their own standards and have their own incentives for further contracts? Is there a way to almost, I mean, do you almost have to create, instead of a private prison industrial complex, do you almost have to create like an industrial complex for charter schools or for community policing? And I know that sounds like you're just getting sucked into the swamp, but I think of the Mike Durant term limits thing where he goes, no one's going to vote for it. It sounds great. No one's going to vote for it. You have to grandfather it in. That's real. Do you have anything? I know that's a big question to throw on you, Don. You can help him out if you want, but is there any like realistic way, aside from us just sitting here and patting ourselves on the back on the podcast, which I'm guilty of doing? I say all the great stuff and then I turn off the podcast and I'm done. What can be done?
Well, Tommy, first of all, you're providing us a platform to talk to other people. There are a lot of people in this world that will sit and watch television and throw bananas at the TV and yada, yada, yada. But here's the point. We are all responsible, every American taxpayer, because we've gotten complacent. That's the problem. We're sitting around here thinking that somebody else should have to do it. Well, I'm that guy who is thinking, I got to do this. If I want the world to be the way I want it, then I've got to get involved. And I don't think we need to hardly change any laws. I mean, most of the laws that we have in place were put there with good intent. The issue is, in order to have in order to have a democracy, can you hold on to it?
Yeah, a republic if you can keep it.
There you have it. That's the quote. A republic if you can keep it. And a democracy requires an educated populace. And we've just got too many people that don't care. I mean, I go to different places and I tell people within the last couple of days, hey, do you realize that there's a big redistricting fight and things have changed and it's going to affect you? And they're like, I was, watching Dances with the Stars and I don't care. Well, when that last couple of weeks ago, when the gas prices went almost up to $5, um, and we're talking about potential food shortages in the next 6 months. Even the president said this. We need to when we have to sacrifice, that's when we have to get tough. But when things are easy, people get lazy. And
circuses.
Yeah, bread and circuses. So I've seen from my travels overseas, and Don, I know you have, people live in just terrible conditions. And I was talking to a young lady, I won't mention her name, but she is an immigrant from Guatemala. I met her at this event we were at on Saturday. And she said, I came here thinking that I had an opportunity for the American dream, and things were better for me in Guatemala, and we may go back. So what I'm getting at with all this is we've all got to pull together. Yeah, we can say, well, we got to change this and we got to change that. The average person has got to get involved. We got to have a red wave and we got to get the word out, because if we lose this opportunity and we're stuck with Mr. Ice cream at 2:00 in the afternoon and take a nap, we're going to be in a bad way. We're going to be in a very, very bad way. Do I want to impeach him? Well, I don't think things will get any better with Ms. Harris. I think they actually might get worse. But the best thing we can do is, just like if you ever wrestled before, sometimes all you can do is clinch.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to try to do if I can get in.
Just hold the line. Yeah.
Hold the line until we can get some real leadership in.
So I hate to be the guy to just re-ask the same question, but show me some of how that sausage is made. Because I think there are answers to things like, how do you get rid of private prisons? Now, personally, I don't find them as big of a deal as everybody else, but
not get rid of them. I'm used as an example. Sorry to interrupt, but to reel back on them, and also to lean forward on the idea of insert market industrial complex. Those seem to be the things that grow naturally, instead of trying to not weeds grow. You don't try to get rid of the growing process. You just plant grass or flowers. Can something else be planted? Is it a charter school industrial complex? Sorry, Don.
That's the way, right? So you need to in the world of getting people to do something they don't want to do, you always got to give them something else they want to do more, right? And I heard the bird rank go out earlier, which makes me think that you've spent some time with guys who invariably didn't want to do whatever they were doing right that minute. Because one of them truisms about the military is, at some point you're gonna be doing something you don't want to do, right?
Military is a gang of doing stuff you don't want to do.
Right. And so that's got to go one of two ways. All right, so I'm just going to drop the hammer and you guys are just going to do what I tell you, and that never works out well. Or it's like, all right, guys, we get over the thing that sucks, then we do the thing that's awesome, right? And it's the same shtick with these people, right? Hey, you guys are all are prison guards who are, walking a turn, and that's great. You're making great money. I don't blame you for not wanting to lose your jobs. What if I took a job from working guys who were trying to stab you with a shank every other day, and we tried to at least keep you about the same money, and we moved you to doing something that was more productive, right? Because then you don't end up with the prison guards union, right? They show up and they're like, we could just not be getting shanked. That seems okay by me, right? And this is, I gotta say, the Republican Party as a whole does not do this well. We like to come in and go, this thing is terrible, and so we should just get rid of it. And then everyone engaged in that thing is like, wait a minute. Like, I've been paying my mortgage for the past 18 years with this. I'm just over halfway. We ain't getting rid of nothing.
Yeah. You can't just gut it, because something will fill the void that's often worse. So you have to, like, realistically, not just, we're going to get rid of public schools. It's no, is there an incentive? Can you offer a business incentive? Someone set up charter schools. Here's some fat new government contracts, the same government contracts that we're going here. It seems to be the more realistic way.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm a big fan of manufacturing, and I think we talked about this the last time we were together. I mean, these people that are in charge now, I call them the neocons. They basically outsourced a lot of our manufacturing,
Well, yeah,
and the reason that we have so much crime is because a lot of these young folks don't have an opportunity to get a job. And they don't have an opportunity to get a job because we're buying everything from overseas. And it doesn't have to be that way. For example, I've got solar panels on top of my house. Yes, I got a little tree hugger inside me, but I do know that
Got a
solar
lower
panels
electric
don't work
bill.
when it's cloudy. And so, why can't we manufacture more things here in the United States? But on the other hand, when you got 70% of the kids, especially the boys that graduate from Baltimore area high schools that can't read, that are functional illiterates, then you can't manufacture anything because they don't know how to do anything. So it's a do loop. There's a lot of things that we need to fix, but we need to provide people with jobs so they won't have to resort to crime. But we got to educate people in order to get them prepared to provide a job. But our politicians don't need to be allowing people to just come in here and sell their products and dump their products without any kind of tariffs or anything like that. So it's a whole ecosystem that we got to change. And the people, if you notice how many millionaires there are in Congress, 90%, if I'm not mistaken, of Congress, they're millionaires. And how did they get that way when you got a salary of $176,000 a year?
Wow.
So,
Well, you see, it's a free market, so we should be allowed to insider trade.
yeah, right. Miss Delisandro, I tell you, she is quite the whiz at trading.
Mhm.
But we got to fix this thing, and all these uh, ancient congressmen we have in there that have benefited from the system to include the congressman that I hope to run against. He's 75 years old. He's been in office 19 years, almost 20 years. And when he first got into office, a lot of people were big fans of his, and he was your prototypical conservative Democrat. But now he only shows up at election time, and he hasn't done a lot. The entire area has kind of deteriorated. I mean, he's getting big projects, and well, he says he's bringing money here, but when I run over potholes over in Baltimore, East Baltimore, that was his district, I'm wondering where the money went. So again, always find the money. That's one of the things I'm planning on doing if I am lucky enough and fortunate enough to get elected, and I want to be visible, be in the hood, be in those places. Now, mind you, my district is shifting up to Carroll County, and I'm a country boy at heart, so that's perfect for me. But I'm not going to forget about the part of the district that is the city. We've got to, if the city's not working, the whole area resonates for good or bad, and we got to do something about that. And I'm just going to give it my best shot.
So what would be the it's obviously a complicated problem.
Oh yeah.
And you're right about the manufacturing. I mean, not everyone, it's a great thing to go off and become an engineer or a whatever, or a dentist, but not everyone does. Not everyone's capable of it. I'm not capable of being in the NBA. It used to be a thing where you could go get a living. You weren't going to live a rock star life, but you could go work at a steel plant or a paper mill. And that was a decent form of life. You were, at least you had a human life. But with all these complex things, where would be the ground floor? So we can talk about all the problems. Where would be the ground floor? I mean, at the simplest terms, what would it be? Would it be shifting money to charter schools and offering them an incentive? Would it be saying for every, job you produce in manufacturing, you can get this contract? What are some real, if someone was really grilling you, like what
Well,
would be, if you could just give them a, you know, if someone said, Tommy, what are you doing to try to help and someone said this to me like 2 months ago. They're like, you yell a lot and but you're not actually doing anything. And I realized that they were right. I was angry, but they were right. So I started reaching out, yourself included, to a ton of candidates and using the platform, though small, I have something I can do. It's not world shifting, but it's something where I realized I was talking a lot, but not offering any meat on the bones. What
As,
is
as a legitimate journalist, though, you're providing a platform for people like me. There's a lot of folks that have reached out to me that, would never have even heard of me if it weren't for you. So I thank you for that.
of
So
course, of course.
do your thing.
So
But
yeah, with you, what would it be now? Someone says you're running, you're winning. They're like, Mr. Flowers, what are you actually going to do? Is there a bill? Is there a specific, yes, Tommy, we are going to remove money from these three schools and give them to these three and it's not trying to grill you, but rather like what can you do so as to stick yourself out? Because if you're just saying ideas, that doesn't really win anyone over. And I'm saying this as someone that supports you. What are some real things you can sink your teeth into?
well, the thing is that to me, first of all, we got to start with crime. A lot of people talk about education, but you can't go to school if there's bullets flying around. And there are people in this world that literally want to destroy this country, and they're starting with their propaganda. If you noticed that Elon Musk has now bought a big share of Twitter,
9.2%.
that he is now the idea of being able to speak freely, that little Twitterverse, even though it's probably only about 1% of the country, they make a lot of noise, and they have literally changed the narrative in this country. And we got to, protect our First Amendment rights to say what we want. And this small group of elites has, attacked the police department and made it, tough to be a police officer. So just like you mentioned, we got to get our streets safe. Little old lady should be able to go to church without being stabbed in Baltimore. When I was in Fells Point after we had our event last week, because as soon as it got dark, we were getting out of there, and no offense, but I saw a gang of people on dirt bikes and four-wheelers riding around. Those things aren't even authorized to be on the road, but yet there was 100 of them that I saw, and the police officers couldn't possibly do anything about something like that because there were just so many kids on these things, and intimidating, tax-paying citizens that are just out trying to have a beer and have a good time. So we got to get a handle on the police and their ability to affect crime and make people understand, if you back your police officers, they will back you, and you will have a crime-free environment, so you can pursue the education, so you can pursue the manufacturing, so you can pursue the other cultural things that you want to do. But if you don't have law and order in your streets, you won't be able to do any of the things that we want to do. And yeah, there are a couple of bad apples out there, but there are a couple of bad apples in the Air Force. There are a couple of bad apples in the Marine Corps. There are ways to get rid of those folks. But the majority of people are just trying to do a good job. And in my intention, we got to back our police officers, and we got to allow them to do the job and allow them to carry out the laws that we've already put in place.
Well, I agree with you. That's probably the ground floor is crime. On everything else can grow. The hierarchy. I got to pay the utilities. The door has to shut, and I have to have running water. After that, I can do the podcast and do my laundry. So if the ground floor is getting a hold on crime, what is the first thing you do about? Is it higher police salaries to attract more people? Is it higher police numbers? Or I mean, do you have to go full militarized police?
Forgive me for interrupting, but I figure after double asking the question, I should hand over a layup. There is sort of that granular level, right? That is when you're working at the federal level, you can't get down to the granular of like how many cops there are, right?
Yeah.
There's not a federal mandate that
Got it.
NYPD have so many officers, none of that. What you can do is that earlier audit discussion, right? You go after the top of the city.
Got
and
it.
You go, hey, why is your crime rate 9,000%? That's not a thing. Somebody figure it out now, right? And there's things you can do with that. The feds can withhold money. They can start investigating the individual people. They can, Trump sent the FBI to Chicago. Now, whatever other problems I may or may not have with the FBI on any given day, they showed up and crime went down. All right.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'll have to then excuse myself, as you can probably see my OCD nature. I'm like, why is this happening? How is this happening? That's how I look at things. If I'm going to do something, who am I going to do? I'm going to email guests. How do I find Bernie? Well, I go through each state and I find the list of That's my own OCD nature where I'm like, Bernie, tell me how many cops you're hiring tomorrow. So, okay, I'll maybe sick myself
I
back.
hate to hand over a second layup. This is totally uncharacteristic for me, but this goes to an earlier discussion of education, right? We killed civics while I was in school in this country,
Huge point.
right?
Huge.
And so everybody goes, okay, so we go to the federal government and they arrest the guy that put graffiti on the end of my block. And the feds don't do that. All right. If you call up the FBI and you go, excuse me, Federal Bureau of Investigation, there's a guy and he's graffitiing the wall. They're going to be like, have you dialed 311? Just why are you even calling us? Right?
Yeah.
So it's important probably for basically the entire country at this point to learn like, hey man, we're sending you to the federal government. We understand that like this cop that sucks, there's probably not a lot you can do about that, but you know, if there's a whole department that sucks for some reason, you can get the federal government to look into the department and go, well, why does this entire department suck? Right? Like that's be that, you know, nefarious reasons, be you know, like I don't know, some Hollywood portrayal of police that is ridiculous, or just because it's Minneapolis and they went, okay, we're going to cut the police by 40%. And so, of course, the department sucks. They're undermanned by half, you know, and you can, it's not always going to, you know, produce great results, but the pressure you can apply is very specific based on what level of government you're on. So for everybody who wants like, hey, we need 50% more cops, go talk to your city council. That's who's hiring these people. Right. That's who's funding salaries. Go talk to the mayor, because the mayor is the one going to the chief of police and going like, hey, I don't want you to have cops, or hey, you know, why don't you have 50% more cops? That's who's actually doing it. And not to, you know, besmirch a run for federal office or anything, but local politics are very touchable. You know, there's a lot of people very disillusioned with what goes on at the federal level, right? Oh my God, you know, I didn't vote for, and so it's very well. How many people are in your, you know, in your federal district? There are a lot of people there. You only get this much say. Your city councilman, there's like 5,000 people in his district, right? You get a lot of say in that guy's life.
And there's an old saying, all politics are local.
Uh-huh.
So that's the guy who's writing your ticket works for somebody on the city council staff or the mayor, and that's the person who's going to affect you. But again, from my level where I'm trying to get to, you can squeeze the spigot and you can make a lot of bad stuff stop. And what I'm seeing from the people that are in charge, they're not interested in their constituents. They don't seem to be trying to make the bad man stop. And that's what I want to do.
Well, the other important part of this, right, is so this needs to be pincer movement like, right?
Yeah.
So if you hit up the federal level and you come down and you go, okay, this you know, this area of the city has a very serious crime problem, we're going to incentivize from the federal level to make that stop. If somebody else is coming up from the bottom and they're running for mayor, they're running for city council, right, then they can sit on the other side of the coin and be like, look, we'd love to hire more cops. That guy's in the way. We'd love to make it so our police, you know, our DA is charging somebody, but he's not, right? Because that's getting to be a popular thing, right? And we need to be hitting this from both sides. This hope that we have, and again, not to besmirch federal runs in the slightest, but like we're just gonna like dispatch the, you know, the guy on the Clydesdale with a giant sword and like, well, you sent him to the federal government, so it's done. This is not how it works, and it's why a lot of people's local levels are not getting better. Is tends to be one side of this push is good, right? One side is great, and that whoever that guy is, that guy needs help on the other side, right? Yeah. So if you're sitting up there and you're like, look, man, the city has a 4-year delay on a report of how many arrests were made last year.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to get on that, but I can only hold one seat, right?
Yeah. In Bernie,
Tommy.
I was gonna say in the final 5 minutes, Bernie, you have the floor. Is there anything you want to bring up or touch on, or maybe lead into the next podcast with, and or Dawn?
Well, you know, there's a lot of things that are on my mind, and but this whole thing in the Ukraine has got people divided. Their heartstrings are such, hey, we need to go help, and a lot of the liberal leftist folks who have never been in the military and would never
Yeah.
send their child
Want-
off to war.
They want
They're
war.
the ones saying, yeah, we got to go kick these people's asses. No, we don't. I know what it feels like to be downrange and not feel the idea that you're going to wake up the next morning. And I've seen some things that human beings should not see, like the inside of people's stomachs and that sort of thing. And it stays with you. And I try not to think about those things. I never want that to happen to anybody's kid. And so, yeah, it's bad in the Ukraine, but if we handle this the wrong way, this could be World War II, World War III, real quick. The people that are running the show right now for us inspire no confidence in me whatsoever. What they're trying to do in Iran, we've got an Iran deal that that our last president arranged for us that was in our favor. But this concept of, hey, we're going to send MiGs from Poland. If you notice, the Polish people said, okay, well, we'll as long as they go through the United States, it's fine, because we don't want Putin bearing down on us. And that's some pretty flat land. It would be pretty easy to roll tanks and planes over that. So the issue of the day, as I was mentioning to somebody yesterday, take the emotion out of it. There are weapons that we discussed that put us in a situation where we no longer have borders anymore. Okay, and the Russians have them, the Chinese have them, we have them, but there are things in this world that you can't defend against.
Yeah.
So sanctions are a wonderful thing to deal with these folks and deal with Putin, but understand they have nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And if those nuclear weapons are not controlled, we got bigger problems.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing, as an old Cold Warrior, that I think about. Yeah, I don't want anybody to die, but I don't want any American blood spilled in a place that we have no strategic interest. And understanding also that there's wars all over this world right now. There's about 10 going on in Africa that nobody talked about. And we talked about Boko Haram and the stuff going on in Eritrea and some of these other places. And we just need to be careful about where we deploy our blood and treasure, because our young people are truly our blood and treasure. And we need to protect those people. We need to, when we go to war, remember the Powell Doctrine? You go all in, and you got to be ready to kill everybody, everything that moves. And if you're not willing to do that, don't go to war.
Yeah. It's Curtis LeMay. When you go to war, use overwhelming force, use unnecessary force, because in the end, you will save more lives, both yours and theirs.
There you have it.
It's what it is. You're not a police force. You're going in to kill and break. That's what the military is.
That line alone, you're not a police force. God, we need to learn that.
Yeah. And it's
because you want stuff broken, send the U.S. military. I promise you things will get broken.
Yeah, and it's
extreme prejudice.
Yeah, exactly. But it's people would say that's heartless. Sure, I've interviewed several of them now, Ukrainian refugees who've sent me pictures of dead kids.
Yeah,
that doesn't mean that your heart doesn't pull. I get it, I do. Yeah. However, eventually the answer, the buck stops here. It does go to someone where it goes, is it going to be their kids or our kids? Because it's one or the other. And you can say that's cold, but I'm, as someone that's never served, I can still look at it and go, sorry, I'm sorry, but that's not ours. It's not ours, especially when, it's like it was like when the order was given by Dick Cheney to, if need be, intercept a commercial aircraft on September 11th, 2001. The instant logic is you shoot down that plane, you kill everyone on the plane. You don't shoot down that plane hits a building, kills everyone in the plane and most of the people in the building. Yeah. The buck stops somewhere. We can all go, well, we shouldn't kill anyone. That's great. We can also all sing Kumbaya and live in the Garden of Eden. Tell me when you find it. The reality is this. Do we go into Ukraine with our own blood and treasure? If there's nuclear war, everyone in Ukraine dies and everyone in the world dies.
Yeah.
If there's not nuclear war, a lot of people in Ukraine die. That's still terrible. Which one do you want? And that's
the point that people need to pay attention to, right? Because look, I'm not, I know all the anti-war guys, Americans just kill civilians. I promise you they don't. All right. Now, nobody wants to hear that. They all know this one guy from this one place that said it's true. But here's what really happens when a war is where you live. People die. A lot of people die. And guess what? If the past 20 years is any experience, the enemy cares a lot less about that than we do. Now, if any of this Russian propaganda is true, or, this anti-Russian propaganda is true, they're just out there slaughtering civilians. Doesn't look like it to me. But if any of that's true, you think they're going to stop? I mean, they'd still be slaughtering civilians, but there'd be us too. So it's not like the trade-off is us or them. It's them or us and them.
Yes.
That's it. That's the trade.
People say, so what do? We just don't do it. What do we do in Darfur? What are we doing about the 2 million Uyghurs in concentration camps in China? What are we doing about the entire population of North Korea?
Well said.
It doesn't mean that your heart doesn't bleed for them. It doesn't mean that you don't pray for them. It doesn't mean that you don't try to do everything in your power, be it the president or be it doing a podcast, us three together. It doesn't mean you don't try to do something. But at the same time, like, we exist in 4-dimensional space time. There's energy and matter. There are certain things. And when I started the podcast, my dad was like, it's great. I love your passion for it. Like, you're a human being that consumes calories and water and needs a place to sleep. Understand that. Understand I can do the podcast. I exist in an apartment in which I'm able to pay rent and the door locks. There are some cold, hard realities. It's not that you don't care for them. It's not, but I mean, you cannot be the world police. And if you are the world police, understand that when in 20 years, everyone says, what did we get out of that? It cost $7 trillion. You got to be on the moral high ground. That's what you got. Yeah. And you weren't. You ended up killing more.
Just terrible. And, the billions of dollars that you mentioned, we were spending $1 billion in Afghanistan a day.
Oh, yeah.
Got nothing out of it.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And, those people are even now more pissed with us, and they got American weapons to shoot at us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be bad. Yeah. And the bottom line is, when the previous president was in place, these things didn't happen. I often wonder, and Bill Maher brought this up, why didn't Putin, since he and Trump were such buddies, why didn't he invade Ukraine then? If they were such buddies, I mean, it would have been no problem.
Well, you have to understand, Bernie. It's all high. It's all, you're not understanding. Yeah, this was all part of the plan. Trump put this in place and purposely let Putin steal the election against him, so this would make Biden look bad. You got to look at the bigger picture, Bert. Come on now.
Yes, that's what it was.
That's what it was. Yeah.
There you go.
It's it's ridiculous, but yeah, that is the sort of the cold answer that I think. And again, as someone that has literally interviewed the Ukrainians who have sent me pictures, have everything in my car, houses burned down, there's a pile of dead kids, there's a girl frozen to death in a sleeping bag in a field.
Looks like Detroit.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, yes. So,
dude,
I'm going to say this here to distract from that quickly.
That's the I'm clipping that.
So, one of them things that
the truth.
It is.
I'm never going to get elected telling the truth.
It's
but you have
starting to get popular.
No, you can. That's something that Trump did do, is he shifted the Overton window on what's acceptable. That's the truth. So you can speak like that.
Yeah. And
I mean, hey, look, I lived not that far from San Francisco for a while, so it looks better than there.
Yeah, it's true. But so, Bernie, I will put all of your links in the description. I will put you and Dawn in contact, and I will follow up with you about what we talked about this morning, and obviously we'll try to get you on here for another podcast. And if anybody is living in Maryland, anybody has questions for Bernie, put them in the comments and we'll go through them next time. I don't care. You clearly are okay with answering these. So hell yeah.
If I don't know the answer, I'm just going to tell you the truth. Sometimes I'm not going to know everything, but the truth is that I'm going to run a campaign where I'm going to be honest, because I got to sleep at night.
Yeah.
And to give you a little background, one of our constituents, one of our supporters was asking me about, hey, you probably ought to kind of moderate that question a little bit, your answer to it, because, you don't want to piss people off. And Actually, we do need to piss people off.
Yeah.
We got to wake folks up.
Don, closing remarks.
That's it, right? People are already pissed off, right? And a lot of the problem right now is that people are pissed off and they don't really know why. They just wake up and they're angry. Gas costs a fortune. Yesterday, 6 months ago, I could eat steak once a month. Now I'm eating hamburger every day. What the hell's going on? I don't like this. And that is, I hate to be so cynical about it, but people don't care about politics until politics is ruining their life.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden they care.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, let's wrap this one up. I'll send you guys the episode when it's up. And thank you both very much for your time.
Look forward to it next time, brother.
Absolutely, my man. Take care, everybody. Stay